Good afternoon, and we are heading to session number 3, and the topic of today's discussion, building supranational solidarity via cultural collaboration. And for those who join us today, my name is Farid Shafif. I am chairman of the Azerbaijani-based think tank called Center for Analysis of International Relations. Today we will discuss what unites us across big landmass. We have talked about, for these 2 days, during these 2 days, about geopolitics, economy, energy. But this area is also rich with cultural interactions. Actually, yesterday in my own presentation, I talked a bit about this. At the Silk Road, we had all kinds of exchange of goods, but also ideas. So we have enough time. We have 4 speakers, and each presentation can last about 15 minutes, and then we will have a Q&A session. So the first speaker is from Turkey, and Sercan Doğan from the Embassy of Turkey. And his topic is shared heritage, shared futures, Turkey and the politics of Turkic connectivity.
Dear Professor Kang, Professor Jang, esteemed colleagues, distinguished researchers, it is an honor to be speaking before such an audience here again after yesterday. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your attendance. Today, I'd like to begin my remarks again with a fundamental yet equally important question. Can shared history by itself truly create a shared future? For many years, the discourse surrounding the Turkic world was largely grounded in history and nostalgia. Our political and cultural narratives were generally shaped around a shared history, a common language, and a sense of kinship. There is no doubt that these common values provide an immensely valuable foundation. Yet in today's geopolitical realities, a notion of brotherhood based solely on emotional affinity without strategic ties to reinforce it cannot sustain a vision. This is precisely the transformation on which my presentation focuses today. Relations between Turkey and the Turkic world. These relations moved beyond being a cultural framework that merely commemorates a shared heritage of the past. What stands before us today is a highly rational and a strategic project for the future, built around the dynamics of connectivity through transport corridors, energy routes, and institutional integration. To place this strategic transformation on a sound analytical footing, we must take a closer look at 3 key concepts. The first is supranational solidarity. Today, this concept no longer refers merely to an abstract sense of identity or a shared language. Rather, it has evolved into a rational mechanism of cooperation built through tangible institutions, shared diplomatic practices, and interconnected networks. The second is the phenomenon of connectivity, which constitutes the backbone of this structure. We understand connectivity through 3 interrelated dimensions. The physical dimension shaped by transport and supply corridors, the institutional dimension driven by emerging multilateral structures, and finally the cultural dimension, fostered through education, shared media platforms, and human mobility. The third and perhaps most critical aspect is the political dimension of this process. We must remember that connectivity is not merely a technical undertaking. It is profoundly political. Indeed, questions such as who is connected to whom, how this integration functions, and through which centers it is organized. These are factors that directly shape the future distribution of geopolitical power. Viewed through this conceptual framework, the evolution of relations within the Turkic world should be understood as a profound paradigm shift from identity to connectivity. The old paradigm, which emerged in the aftermath of the Cold War and persisted for many years, was largely built upon a nostalgic discourse of brotherhood between Turkey and the countries in the Turkic world in Central Asia. Relations during this period were driven by a symbolic sense of unity rooted in shared history and language. And these were characterized by a high degree of rhetorical intensity. Frequent meetings were held and enthusiastic declarations were issued. Yet this discursive proximity often failed to translate into tangible, structural and sustainable forms of integration on the ground. Today, however, a new paradigm is taking shape, one that is rational, action-oriented, and shaped by the realities imposed by geopolitics. Our vision is no longer confined to commemorating a shared historical legacy. It is about building resilient networks that integrate transport, energy, and supply routes. Symbolic declarations have given way to transnational infrastructure projects and a serious process of institutionalization, consolidated through structures such as the Organization of Turkic States, OTS. In short, the Turkic world is no longer connected solely through sentiment. It is increasingly bound together through institutional capacity. Naturally, this strategic transformation has also fundamentally redefined Turkey's role in the region. In this equation, Turkey is not merely a historical reference point. It serves as a facilitator that accelerates integration and transfers technical capacity to its partners. Through initiatives such as the Middle Corridor, it functions as an economic and logistical hub, linking the markets of Asia and Europe. Most importantly, Turkey occupies a central position within this emerging architecture as a norm setter, one that shapes institutional practices and establishes standards across a broad spectrum ranging from trade to defense industry. Moving from theory to practice, we must examine the concrete instruments and mechanisms through which Turkey is building this new paradigm of connectivity on the ground. We can interpret this architecture over three main pillars. The first pillar rests upon institutional structures that ensure enduring cooperation. The flagships of this process is without a doubt the OTS, Organization of Turkic States. The OTS has moved beyond its previous identity as a consultative forum and has evolved into a fully fledged international organization through summits at the level of heads of state and institutionalized policy coordination. Today, many critical decisions from joint investment funds to regional security mechanisms are made directly within OTS. The second pillar is the education and cultural mechanisms that constitute the human capital of the integration. This field has also expanded far beyond classical public diplomacy. Jointly established international universities, systematic student mobility programs involving thousands of young people, and cross-border media collaborations, in a sense, provide cognitive integration. The goal here is not just to harmonize languages, it is to create a new generation of intelligentsia that can develop shared reflexes in crisis and think with the same strategic horizon. The third pillar, which directly affects global geopolitics, is economic and physical connectivity. The strategic backbone of this vision is most certainly the Trans-Caspian Middle Corridor. In recent years, the Middle Corridor has become the safest artery connecting the markets of Asia and Europe, especially amid the geopolitical bottlenecks experienced on the northern transport routes. When this physical infrastructure is combined with pipelines carrying the energy resources of the Caspian Basin to the west, and with the ever-deepening free trade networks, it becomes far more evident that this connectivity, spearheaded by Turkey, is not merely a local form of solidarity, but an indispensable geo-economic security architecture on a continental scale. At this point, I'd like to open 3 basic analytical arguments for discussion to have a deeper understanding of this process. First, the legacy of common history and kinship does not automatically produce political solidarity. Solidarity is not a given inherited from history. It is a strategic process continuously rebuilt through visionary political will, common institutions, and concrete projects with tangible outcomes on the ground. Second, in today's world, connectivity is directly a mechanism for the production of power and capacity building. The establishment of new transport and trade networks is not merely a logistical move. The real analytical issue is who will be positioned at the center and who on the periphery in this integration architecture, and who will control the geo-economic axis. To remain with the analytical framework, we must also put the structural risk faced by this integration model on the table. The first and the most evident risk is asymmetry. The conversion of this connectivity network is a structure excessively centered around Turkey may harm relations among equals and create concerns about hegemony. Second, local actors have their own national agendas. The multi-vector foreign policies of the Central Asian republics and the delicate balances they have established with giant neighbors cannot be reduced to a mere Turkic world axis. The third and the most critical issue is sustainability. The greatest test ahead is whether these steps, taken with a strong political will, can evolve into rational institutional mechanisms, self-financing and resilient to crisis, and independent of leaders' personal bilateral relations. In conclusion, the evolution of relations between Turkey and the Turkic world reveals a clear reality. The Turkic world is no longer merely a legacy of a nostalgic past recalled in history books. It is the network of the future being woven, meticulously crafted through fusion of geopolitical reasoning, rational interests, and shared capacity. If in the 21st century, this region is to become not a passive periphery but a center that shapes the game in global politics, this will be possible not through emotional rhetoric of brotherhood, but through an architecture of physical and institutional connectivity. This paradigm shift, extending from identity to strategic integration, constitutes the most tangible key to our region's capacity to determine its own destiny. With that, I'd like to end my presentation and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I just would like to add to this very important topic about Turkic community, Turkic connectivity. I think this is something important developing between Mediterranean and Asia, East Asia. That's the exact organization of Turkic states. I'm sure in certain areas we will see much more development. And the structure is quite flexible of this organization. We have within organization countries which go deeper, for example, Azerbaijan and Turkey, And we even have a concept, one nation, two states, put forward by the late president of Azerbaijan, Heydar Aliyev, in the 90s. We have more loose connection when it comes to certain areas of cooperation. But one thing you mentioned, which I would like to address, there are some concerns outside of this organization by certain states. This is, I would say, natural geography, natural history. Based on that and the linguistic and historical roots countries built, it's not directed against any power and any state. And one thing which I think Turkey is doing really good, it's avoiding this sort of what you mentioned, hegemony. At least I'm, from Azerbaijan perspective, can say that Turkey, whatever proposal coming, is very respectful, very careful. Within organization of Turkic state, it should be accepted by consensus. Though I see that sometimes the forces outside of organization of Turkic state, we try to exploit this notion of hegemony, etc. But there's nothing like that, at least again, from Azerbaijani perspective, we feel within this organization. Thank you very much. Teşekkürler Sercan Bey. Our next speaker, Valeria Gianotta. Valeria Gianotta, Director Observatory on Turkey, CESP Italy. And topic of her presentation, the role of the Italian liberal professions and APRI International in building supranational solidarity.
Open? Oh, okay. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Farid, our chairman, our president, for moderating. It's a pleasure, again, to be in Korea. Thanks to Hankuk University and President Kang and our dear friend Ji Wong for inviting me and making this possible again. And it's a real pleasure to sitting again on the table with friends from Turkey, Azerbaijan, Japan, and Korea. Today, actually, I will participate under another hat, which is the board of directors of APRI International, which is the internationalization arm of the Italian Confederation of Liberal Professionalism. But my speech is also very well interconnected with Korea, with Turkey, and with Azerbaijan as a case studies. Definitely since yesterday, but since already long time we are speaking about the crisis of the current international system. We spoke about the importance of middle power as actors for creating cooperative frameworks in order to mitigate the challenges and the crisis. And I do believe that in this framework also the role of the liberal professionals, and in this case the Italian liberal professionals, play a crucial role. Not as a state actor, but as a non-state actor within the framework of the liberal approach of international relations, putting great attention to epistemic community, professional organizations, and so on. Basically, I do believe that these kind of actors play a crucial role as a facilitator within a middle power framework, facilitating dialogue, acting as a bridge maker in order to create and to lay the foundations of cooperative approaches and also solidarity approaches. I'm saying this because starting from the ground, basically liberal professionals, thanks to their technical competence and knowledge, can create the condition of people-to-people diplomacy and enhancing dialogue. And basically, as Joseph Nye says, they are actors of soft power diplomacy. Serkan Bey before spoke about the dimensions of cultural diplomacy, economic diplomacy, and also the traditional political diplomacy. And I do perceive the role of the liberal professional as a new interpretation of diplomacy, such as the professional diplomacy as well. Basically, I would like to give you some small information about what is Confprofessioni ed Apri International. So the Italian Confederation of Liberal Professionals basically was founded in 1969 and over time has been institutionalized, and it became a core institution within the so-called Sistema Italia, or the Italian system, following the strategic line of the ministries of the Minister of Foreign Affairs as well. So basically, thanks to the international arm, which is APRI International, under the slogan Global Growth Expert, Italy aims to operate in those markets that consider of priority importance for the Italian interest in terms of cooperations. And here it comes the role of South Korea as the primary strategic country in the Asia, the role of Turkey as the first strategic country within the European and the close Mediterranean area, and also Azerbaijan, which is nowadays, I would like to say, the most strategic partner for Italy. And we make a joke sometimes also in Italy with the Turkish representatives by saying that Azerbaijan became more closer than Turkey to Italy. But this is not the case, by the way. So just to give you some data, nowadays Confprofessioni, I mean the Italian Confederation of Liberal Professionals, counts around 1 million and a half independent professionals and approximately 4 million workers, and it generates around 12% of the Italian GDP. And basically, also APRI International is proposing and is proving to be very efficient in terms of creating a new model for sustaining the internationalization of the Italian actions throughout the figure of the senior advisor. So basically, APRI International chooses some key people that they are quite well embedded within the business environment. They prove to be highly qualified in terms of professionals, and they, for each country of great importance for Italy, those senior advisors are entitled to support basically whoever from Italy would like to open up to that specific country by providing consultancy, by providing a design and information of the possibility actually for intervening in the hosting country as well. And this model has been also pretty much highly appreciated by the Italian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Tajani, who recently said that throughout the model of senior advisor, professional diplomacy is taking place and it proves to be quite effective. And here I would like also to use this opportunity to say that Mr. Ji Wong has been appointed recently as a senior advisor for APRI International for the Korean market, which is the first step for Confprofessioni and APRI International to open up towards Asia. Also, in terms of public diplomacy, the liberal professionals are playing a great role throughout an annual international meeting that they organize yearly in Rome. And this year we had a representative from Invest in Turkey, the ambassador of Turkey as well. And it's considered kind of one of the golden event in terms of public diplomacy and professional diplomacy in building bridging and in raising awareness as well. But coming to the case studies, so basically when we look at Turkey, Korea and Azerbaijan, we can see clearly that behind and beside the traditional type of diplomacy, there is the role of the liberal professionals supporting the economic ties and the political ties as well. For example, in the case of Turkey, in 2025, just after the bilateral intergovernmental meeting between President Erdogan and the Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, many memorandum of understandings, around 12 memorandum of understandings have been signed in different areas, spanning from aerospace, the so-called agreement between Bayraktar and Leonardo, to culture and to education and many other areas. And in this situation, of course, in order to make the real effective and great impact, we need the technical competence that just liberal professionals can provide. When I speak about liberal professionals, by the way, I refer to figures such as lawyers, engineers, doctors, I mean, any kind of liberal professionals we include inside, with the exception of journalists. That then can support basically the business and even the small and medium enterprise that represent the core of the business environment in Italy, and we aim at replicating by creating partnership in the hosting countries as well. When it comes to South Korea, also, we have to mention that it sounds as a coincidence that while I was flying to Seoul, the president of Korea was in Rome, sealing again new cooperative agreements with Giorgia Meloni following the important visit that the Italian Prime Minister made in Korea in January 2026. And just a couple of days ago, they signed a new partnership, and they say that this is a new special strategic partnership. So basically the focus will be in semiconductor, again, defense and security. And even in this area, we believe that the role of the liberal professionals can play from the technical aspect a great role. And thank you again to Ji Wong for representing us here. And then when it comes to Azerbaijan, the new special friend and strategic partnership. So Azerbaijan is of crucial importance for Italy in terms of connectivity, as it was said before, in terms of energy supplies, and also in terms of expansions of any kind of cooperation. In Azerbaijan has been founded the Italian Azerbaijani university, very recently. So made the exchange of scholars and also NSC students, and also in terms of public diplomacy and exchange diplomacy is a great importance as well. Azerbaijan today raises as the largest export market in Europe, and the bilateral trade with Italy is approximately 16% of the total gas import and 17% of oil share. And we've seen that these data are dramatically increased overall after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And most recently, SOCAR has also bought the Italian energy petrol agency. So we are expecting further cooperation. And even in this sector, I do believe that it's obvious that the role of the technicalities and the competence and the knowledge will play a crucial role. So by concluding, I would like just to reiterate that in this very hectic environment where there is a crisis in terms of international leadership, the real players are the middle power, and the middle powers as a state are very good in creating a multilateral framework in terms of traditional diplomacy, but sometimes traditional diplomacy is not enough. It's not grounded at people-to-people diplomacy, and what does not involve the knowledge and the expertise and the epistemic point of view. And therefore, we believe that throughout the model of senior advisors, creating this networking and this kind of architecture, also Confprofessioni ed Apri International can act as a bridge maker and as a sort of a good example to be replicated also in some other countries to enhance further the cooperation aimed at supranational solidarity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valeria, and thank you for this valuable information. Since you mentioned the middle power, I just would like to use this opportunity. 2 years ago, we issued the journal of our center and dedicated to the concept of middle powers. So you can find the issue at our website, journal website, which stands CSPjournal.az. So, and we covered not only Azerbaijan, but some other Central Asian states. And thanks for information about the development between Italy and Azerbaijan. Our next speaker, Mr. Koichi Yonemura. editor for News, the main niche newspaper from Japan, and the topic of his presentation, The Power of Food, Can Culinary Exchange is Interstate Tensions. The floor is yours.
Hi everyone, I'm Koichi Onemura from my niche newspaper. I have been covering East Asia for 20 years and worked in China for 7 years and also worked here in Seoul for 3 years, and I have a very happy memory from my time in Seoul. Today I'd like to talk about Japan-China relationship. Everyone knows that current two countries' relationship is really bad, but I'd like to remind you that still China is the largest trading partner for Japan, and also Japan is third largest trading partner for China after United States and South Korea, then Japan. And also I checked this morning the statistics, and it said from January this year to March, the export from Japan to China and both import from China to Japan, more than 10% increase I can find. So even though we have a political conflict, but still Japan-China economical relationship and cooperation is strong. But having said that, but it's true that the Japan-China relations is really a poor state. It's difficult to see, but it's according to this opinion poll in 2024, 89% of Japanese people have a negative impression of China, and while 88% of Chinese people have a negative impression of Japan. And as you know, relations became even worse after Prime Minister Takaichi made remarks last November regarding a possible Taiwan contingency. Okay. And as you know, the Chinese government criticizing now Japan as a neo-militarism, and also some Chinese scholar is talking like Japan is East Asian Israel. That means, you know, Israel dragged America, United States to war with Iran, right? So that their narrative is Japan is trying to drag United States to war with China. And I have a very strong counter-argument for that in my mind. But today, actually, I'm quite tired of talking about political conflict with China. So today, I switch the theme to a different aspect, happier one. I'd like to talk about food today. Despite the tense situation, a new trend called gachichuka, meaning authentic Chinese cuisine, has become very popular in Japan, and it became a buzzword in Japan. And Chinese-owned restaurants are rapidly increasing in Tokyo. And in this presentation, I would like to examine the reason behind this trend and consider whether it could influence Japan-China relationship. So first, what is gachichuka? Gachichuka means the Japanese gachi means authentic or serious, and it is often contrasted with the machichuka. Machi means town or street, so referring to the Chinese restaurant that have existed in Japan for many years. That is machichuka. And although many of those restaurants were originally started by Chinese immigrants. Their dishes were gradually adapted to Japanese taste over time. So I think for Korean audience, it's easy to understand. Machichuka is like jjajangmyeon and jampong, and the gachichuka is maratang or sujiang huoguo. And according to why then the number of gachichuka restaurant, authentic Chinese restaurant, is rapidly growing in Japan. According to Masato Nakamura, the head of the Tokyo Deep China Association, there are already more than 1,000 authentic Chinese restaurants in Tokyo metropolitan area. And why have so many opened? The most direct reason is the increase in the number of Chinese residents in Japan. According to Japanese government statistics, the number of Chinese nationals living in Japan increased from 150,000 in 2015 to over 900,000 in 2025. So I can feel I was in Tokyo in 2019 and went to China and spent 3 years there and came back in 2023, and I could tell that in Tokyo, walking around Tokyo street, I can hear more Chinese than before. So why has the Chinese population in Japan increased so much over the last decade? According to Yudai Matsumoto journalist, the author of Runri, there are several reasons. And one reason is that many people, Chinese people, want to escape China's extremely competitive society. Competition for university entrance and employment is very intense in China. And in comparison, as you know, Japan's population is already shrinking, so Japan has a less competition for university entrance and getting jobs. So some Chinese families see this as an opportunity. And in fact, the number of Chinese residents has increased in education-focused areas of Tokyo. And especially if you go to the good cram school in Tokyo, the highest score class have almost 1/4 or 1/5 of the students are from China. And also a second reason is that some wealthy Chinese people now see Japan as a safe place for their assets. And experiencing during the COVID lockdowns and the recent downturn in China's real estate market made many people feel uncertain about the future. In addition, under the Xi Jinping administration, some intellectuals in China feel there is less freedom, especially freedom of speech in China. So as a result, Japan became one of the gathering points for Chinese diaspora. So recently, Chinese language bookstores and discussion salons aimed at intellectuals have been opening in Tokyo. And also last December, an interesting event was held in Tokyo that brought together Chinese speakers from mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and other regions to discuss current affairs, nonfiction, and documentary works over the course of 2 days. So they used to get together in Hong Kong some years ago, but as you know, Hong Kong's freedom of speech is a bit declining, so now they are gathering in Tokyo. So that is the Chinese side of the story. And then how did the authentic Chinese restaurants or gachichuka become very popular and accepted by ordinary Japanese people? One major reason seems to be the COVID-19 pandemic. The term gachichuka spread widely on social media in 2022, and when international travel was still heavily restricted. Travel lovers began visiting gachichuka restaurants because they couldn't go to abroad. So if you go to the gachichuka restaurant, then they could experience a feeling like a overseas travel without leaving Japan. And it was also during the pandemic in 2021, the Masato Nakamura created the Tokyo Deep China Association, the associations I mentioned before, or TDC, to help people share information about authentic Chinese restaurants. Today, the group has around 11,000 Facebook members and 34,000 followers on X. And also, this is the Tokyo Deep China Association. And also, there are also food festival promoting Chinese cuisine that was started by Japanese people who studied in China, including the Sucheng Festival and Lam Festival, both held in Nakano, Tokyo. And every year attract 50,000 visitors a day. And the point is, this event was not created by Chinese people. This event was created by Japanese food lovers. But the point is, can this kind of culinary exchange can improve Japan-China relations? Okay. Well, there is okay. There is some reason to think it might. Sorry. Oh. If you can see the, it might be difficult to see, but if you see the graph, in 2015, Japan greatly relaxed the visa requirements for Chinese tourists, and as a result, the number of Chinese visitors to Japan increased from 2.4 million in 2014 to 8.3 million in 2018. And if you can see the second red line, it dropped sharply, right? And that is a negative image of Japan from Chinese. And Chinese public opinion toward Japan improved significantly. So the data suggests that direct cultural exchange experience have the potential to change one's impression of other country. So it might, well, this gachichuka movement might help improve Japanese people's negative impression to China. So that's my idea. But currently, the number of Japanese people deeply interested in authentic Chinese cuisine is probably still limited to tens of thousands, or perhaps just over 100,000. And also, there has been a very little sign that the Chinese government or major Chinese companies trying to use this trend to improve China's image in Japan or expand business opportunities. So therefore, unfortunately, it is unlikely that the authentic Chinese cuisine boom since 2020 will not have a significant impact on the frosty political relations between Japan and China. But still, I'd like to argue that the role that the fans of authentic Chinese cuisine play in bringing the gap between the Chinese community within Japan and the Japanese society is meaningful. For example, the TDC regularly organized tours of Tokyo's gachichuka food districts for the general Japanese public. Because, these Chinese restaurants, some of them, they don't speak Japanese at all. So for ordinary Japanese people, they're a little bit high hurdle to get in the restaurants. So it is important to someone to help ordinary public to get into these kind of restaurants. And also, considering that Tokyo is becoming a gathering point for the Chinese diaspora, these activities like TDC and the Gachichuka Festival will likely contribute to building positive relations between the growing Chinese community in Japan and Japanese public. So in the long run, this may serve as the foundation for stable relations between Japan and China. And in the conclusion, one of my friends, professor of Tokyo University, published a small article in Yomiuri Shimbun recently, and Sahashi-san said, introducing the book about the activity of this TDC, and he said Japan-China relations are not just about politics. So enjoying each other's cultures is also an important aspect of that relationship. And I want to cherish the freedom found at the dinner table. And that's what he wrote. And I strongly resonate with his words. Thank you.
Thank you. Interesting case. Just recently I was in Shanghai and I visited after several Chinese restaurants. And one day I visited restaurant, the Japanese barbecue. So it is quite popular in Shanghai. So usually we know many cases, including in my region, when we, paradoxically, we share the same food, but we are fighting for its heritage and legacy. And we can see that across the world, in Mediterranean, in Eastern Europe, and etc. So, but some optimistic view on how the food can serve as a uniting force. Our last but not least speaker, Yoon Jo Park, professor at Keimyung University, Republic of Korea, and her presentation, Transnational K-pop Fandom and Practices of Solidarity, Latin American Perspectives. The floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Yoon-Ju Park, and I'm from Keimyung University, the Department of Spanish and Latin American Studies. I don't know when was the last time I had to do my presentation in English, so I'm terribly nervous, but I will do my best to make this presentation understandable, I guess. I have to confess first that I was not a big fan of K-pop culture, Hallyu, all the hypes. Rather, I was pretty skeptical about what is going on in the global cultural phenomenon. But as a sociologist of social movement, I noticed some something quite interesting is happening with the K-pop fandom and their political activities. So today I'm going to share what I found out in Latin American cases, and possibly I could contribute a little bit to understand what does it mean by solidarity in the era of practically we are losing it. So I'm going to begin my presentation right now. So, can I have, thank you. The poster you're watching is the poster made by Chilean K-pop fandom to make a promotion about this march of feminist and the democratization movement all together. So why K-pop fandoms are so into this movement, I'm going to discuss right now. If you are familiar with the recent history of Latin American big protest, the biggest one happened in 2019 in Chile. It is called Estallido Social. It was the biggest social unrest in Chilean history. And then later, to 2021, we had a similar big, huge protest, Paro Nacional in Colombia. And year 2020, up until now, Mexico, in Mexico, a lot of feminists are marching, protesting against sexual violence happening in Mexico. Also, in year 2023, also you might already heard about this president of Argentina, who is pretty conservative, Milei, and the K-pop fandom kind of rose against this whole right-wing presidential candidate. So my research question was, is the rise of politically active K-pop fandom in Latin America is it just coincidence or the product of a transnational solidarity? Or in what way does K-pop fandom in Latin America resemble other transnational movements? Already a lot of scholars discussed about what is going on in politically active K-pop fandom in Latin America. Some might argue that they had this great civic imagination in their fandom culture, or others would say that it was from the beginning transcultural fandom, so obviously they're going to help each other. Recent work by Cho and Gonzalez Lustig argue that it was part of a K-global citizenship. I had a little bit problem with that, but again, they argue that liking or enjoying K-pop, they kind of learned the value of democratization, etc., that Korean society have great importance on it. So reading this existing literature, I still have a question, but how these fandom communities organized together and ended up having these huge protests together. So what is their tactics, or how does the diffusion of tactics actually work? So I looked into the theory of a transnational social movement. I'm not saying that K-pop fandoms in Latin America is actually transnational social movement, but the theory of transnational social movement gave us some insights to understand what is going on with K-pop fandom and their solidarity network in Latin America. Among others, I would argue that the importance of diffusion and scale shift in movement, in other words, spreading tactics across the border and all levels, is happening in K-pop fandom in Latin America. So I'm going to show how that happens and why this is important to understand Latin American society and their social movement. So I looked at the 4 cases I already discussed in the introduction: Chile, Colombia, Argentina, and Mexico. Chile was the first country where people finally see the importance of K-pop fandom in social protest. As some of you already know, in 2019, October, Chile experienced enormous social unrest. It began with a metro fare hike, but it was not only the reason for people to go out to the street and protest. And during the protest, people demanded social reforms and all kind of social justice issues that Chilean government has ignored for a while. And in these protests, K-pop fandoms began to organize themselves and protested on the web, and they used their fandom account to spread the information about the protest and denounce a human rights violation made by Chilean government, etc. So November 2019, Ministry of Interiors of Chile issued a report of 112 pages. And in that report, the Ministry of the Interior named K-pop fans as a community of external influence in the unrest. In other words, Chilean government kind of blamed K-pop fandoms as a main reason for this unrest. Also, of course, fandoms are very upset about it, and it became big international news. Even in Korea, a lot of media coverage happened to discuss about this. Chilean government had to go through all those ridicules because of this report, but I would argue that there is a reason why Chilean government thought that K-pop fandom is behind this unrest, because enormous amount of SNS messages or Twitters was made by K-pop fandom account. So Chilean government thought that, of course, then K-pop fandom is behind this unrest. But the issue is, it's not only Chileans who write or retweet those messages. Actually, Chilean K-pop fandom groups began the messages, but K-pop fandoms all around the Latin American countries joined this effort. So at the end of the day, these messages became such a hit and news. So in this process, K-pop fandoms in Latin American countries kind of began to join to help each other in terms of social protest. Later, Chilean K-pop fandom joined their force to support Boric, which is the last president of Chile, who is very progressive in his agenda. And K-popers joined, and then they made this campaign to make this Boric is visible in SNS. So there was another effort that Chilean K-pop fandom groups did to help political cause. Also, those tactics traveled to Colombia. So it happened in 2019 in Chile. Later, it happened in Colombia 2021. Similar thing happened. A lot of people made a tweet, and then Colombian right-wing or conservative president was attacked by K-pop fandoms in all these social media accounts. Colombian government tried to talk to the leader of this movement, but it was impossible because they could not identify who is the leader because it was just fandom account. So it was another incident that K-pop fandoms actively involved in political action. In Mexico again, there is a Latin American feminist movement happening in Mexico. March 8th, is the International Day of Women's Day, International Women's Day, and every year Mexico organizes a huge protest. And in this protest, again, K-pop fandoms participated and provided logistics, hashtag defense, and physical presence and support to this movement. Later in Argentina, this President Milei had this vice president candidate, Bia Ruel. She made a derogatory comment about BTS years ago, and then BTS community in Argentina made it public, and then all those fandoms in Latin America kind of organized to have a SNS campaign against Milei and Bia Ruel. Milei won the presidential election. However, it was another incident that K-pop fandom in Latin America organized and helped each other to support the social justice cause or whatever cause in each other these countries. So those are things happening in Latin America, and we are expecting to happen even more in the future. Politically active K-pop fandom probably has nothing to do with K-pop itself, because all those K-pop idols has never thought of using their songs to protest against conservative politicians in Argentina or protest against sexual violence in Mexico. However, somehow K-pop communities in Latin American countries reconstruct the meaning of K-pop and use those K-pop fandom to bring each other together with solidarity to protest social injustice. So, my conclusion is, since 2019, with the Chilean politically active K-pop fandom emerged in Latin America, Estallido Social was the first, and the Paro Nacional in Colombia, and anti-femicide protests in Mexico. Recently, we had anti-Milei Bia Ruel coalition in Argentina. All these incidents happened domestically, but K-pop fandoms in all around Latin America joined the force and helped each other. Politically active K-pop fandom in Latin America could be interpreted as new transnational movement because they are very good at global framing, they are very good at internalization of agenda. Also, they diffuse their tactics across the board, and they externalize with coalition formation. So Chilean K-pop fandoms does not act solely. They act with Argentinian K-pop fandom, and etc., etc. So although politically active K-pop fandom in Latin America share the tactical repertoire of transnational movement, I have to say that their goals and grievances diverge according to domestic political conditions. So they act globally, but their attention tended to be focused on domestic issues. Finally, the further research is needed to clarify how the values shared across K-pop fandom, like social justice, environmental protection, gender equality, among others, are translated into collective grievances capable of sustaining political mobilization across borders. Finally, I would like to say that we have discussed a lot of issues regarding solidarity in terms of international institutional levels. And then also we realize that it is weakening, so rather it is weakening greatly. So I'm presenting this case of solidarity emerged from the grassroots, where we least expected. So maybe this presentation might give you some ideas. Maybe in the 21st century, solidarity building could mean quite differently from the past. That's all. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for your interesting presentation. First of all, your English is very solid. Second, for me, it's quite a revealing topic. K-pop is also quite popular among the Azerbaijani youth, but I have not noticed any political connotation with this popularity. And with some other countries, I used to live in Canada. I worked as a diplomat there, so K-pop popular there, but this phenomenon that in Latin America it has this political connotation, quite interesting phenomenon. Thus we finalized all presentations, and now we have time for Q&A. Please, if you have questions, raise your hand and present yourself. Yes.
Oh, thank you. My question is to Valeria. It's about EU-Turkey relations. As you are focused on Turkey, it's very interesting to me how you see the future of Turkey's EU membership prospects. And we have heard a lot about some EU member countries who are very much against Turkey's EU membership. Some of them have been supporting. But to be honest, I haven't heard much about Italy's position on EU membership prospects of Turkey. So the first part of the question is overall the process, how it is going on, what you think about future prospects. Second, Italy's position. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, let me start, and I don't want to disappoint our dear friend from Georgia, but related to the European Union, I'm not so positive as he is. I mean, maybe because I live within European Union, and I mean, the perspective that we have, at least in the Mediterranean area, is that this European Union does not reflect the needs of the society. There is kind of distance between people and the bureaucratic center in Brussels. Therefore, even if we evaluate the last election, European elections, we can understand why the center-right and the right parties actually had an increasing seats, an increasing stake within the parliament. This is just an introductory remark. But actually has also much to do with the EU perspective towards Turkey, and on the opposite side, the Turkey towards the European Union. So when we look at the relations, we have to consider a multi-level analysis, because Turkey has been a long-standing candidate towards the European Union. Finally, in 2005, became, the candidacy, the accession process started. But this accession process started already with some handicap, I would like to say, because already in that time, due to mainly to the Cyprus issue, that was accepted. I mean, Cyprus a full member within European Union in 2004, despite the Greek Cypriots rejected the Annan plan, but they got rewarded by the full accession. And what does it mean? It means that already the 35 chapters got invalidated by the veto of Cyprus. Of course, in that time, Turkey was a totally different country comparing to this time. But still, we cannot proceed forward into the negotiation process. I will provide you some data. Out of 35 chapters in the negotiation, like around 11 or 17, I do not remember, they are just blocked by the veto. So it's impossible to go on. And from 2005 until nowadays, just one chapter has been open and closed, while all the others remain pending. And also, the so-called Cyprus issues is a pending issue, so there is no way to go forward. So most of the time, from a political perspective, we hear from European Union, mainly the European Parliament, the deterioration of human rights and democracy in Turkey. But this is also used in order to justify, actually, the deadlock stance within the accession process, and this is one part. So the accession process is still a dossier valid on the table, but unfortunately, as long as we do not solve the Cyprus issue, there is no way to proceed further. Okay, so there is already a sort of genetic problem within the accession process. Besides that, we have recorded some improvement in the relations. For example, in 2016 have been sealed the so-called refugee agreement between Turkey and Brussels with some conditions related to the so-called Syrian refugees that, by the way, in Turkey they do not have the status of refugees, but they are guests under special conditions. But starting from that point, it became clear that the bilateral relations between the European Union and Ankara became something else, that a relations based on the candidate state to European Union where the negotiations started. Because according to me, European Union started to treat and look at Turkey as a third country, to put some transactional, actually, deal and agreements. And also, in that time, in 2016, some conditions were put, and despite the fact that, according to my perspective, Ankara proved to be a reliable and trustable partner, because, by the way, it hosted more than 5 million Syrian refugees, some conditions were not kept as it was promised by Brussels. For example, easing the negotiation process is still a pending issue. Easing and the visa liberalization is a thorny issue nowadays. I mean, for the Turkish citizens who want to come to Europe and apply for the Schengen visa, which I find totally violating the reciprocity principle, because, for example, as Italian, I can access Turkey just by showing ID card, but I have many Turkish friends, academics, professionals, that they have to ask for appointment. There is no even slot available sometimes for appointment, and they miss the opportunity simply to come to Italy or to Europe for joining a conference like this, okay? So this is a kind of a very big problem nowadays. And then some other requirements that they were not fulfilled. So, and we are still in this kind of situation that the relations nowadays is more a transactional relations rather than a relations related to a candidate member with the negotiation still on the table. Nowadays, what is new is that European Union, as it was mentioned before, started to invest a lot in defense and security, because they realized that under this American administration, I mean, we do not get the support as we used to have by Washington, or at least the rhetoric of Donald Trump is not helping in that way. Turkey has been providing important support in some cases and some scenarios, for example, in Ukraine, where Turkey made a difference also for the Ukrainian defense throughout the supply of the TB2 drone by Bayraktar. So already Ankara stands as kind of security provider to European Union. But even in that case, when we look at the program of the so-called SAFE program of rearming Europe for the public defense procurement, Turkey is not considered as not even as a kind of embedded country within European Union. So despite the fact that pragmatically at bilateral level there are many agreements, also the Italian defense and security agreement, if Turkey wants to apply for the European funds within the European project, has to find a partner, because it's not allowed to enter. And this also has much to do with the negativity and the negative stance of some states such as Cyprus as well. But I do believe that nowadays this situation can be solved. If I have to look in perspective, honestly, I do not see Turkey within European Union as a full member in the short or medium term. I think this is an issue that will last forever. Maybe not even my nephews will see it. If European Union does not change the vision and the approach, and Cyprus do not leave behind this sort of maximalist approach as well. And this is one question. When it comes to Italy, most of the time, we got used to listen to the negative statement from European Union towards Turkey. But within European Union, there are a group of states that have been always in favor of Turkey within European Union. And one of these states has been Italy since the beginning of the negotiation. And this favor towards Turkey is not related to any government. I mean, in any case, with Berlusconi, with leftist government, and now with Meloni, the support for Turkey as an EU member is always there. When it comes to Italy, beside these supports within European Union, then we have another, what I mentioned before, an important strategic partnership that has been sealed and increased a lot. And it's pivoting on important economic bilateral data, but also in the importance of the, how can I say, friendship and so-called brotherhood, as you mentioned before, between the Italians and the Turks. So we have been always, the relations has been always characterized by a sort of genuine and genetic empathy and sympathy between each other, which is not obvious, because, for example, when you look at the feeling between the Germans and the Turks, sometimes, I mean, the perception is not the same. So we are in this situation now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
May I add some? Thank you very much for your question, and thank you, Valeria, for your truthful information and honest evaluations about Turkey and the EU issue. This is a very thorny issue. I would like to add just one thing about the Cyprus issue. So there have been many cases in the past where we were so close to resolution of the Cyprus issue, and Turkey and Turkish people in Cyprus stands resolute to finding a resolution to this issue concerning the realities on the ground, and we hope both sides consider this issue, consider the social reality on the island, and consider the Turkish people on the island with a political will of their own, with Turkey's support, Turkey's utmost support in their backs. So as long as the Greek Cypriots and other parties to the conflict, to the Cyprus issues, regard the problem with a clear mind, with honesty, I think the resolution on the island will not be a distant point. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, please. And then sit down.
Okay. My question goes to, comment goes to Yonemura, Mr. Yonemura and Dr. Ba. So, well, how can I put it? As a researcher, and when we talk about the analytical tool and research framework of you two gentlemen and ladies, you are trying to find an independent variable just to explain the results. Okay, so as far my understanding, as far as I understand, when it comes to the spread of a certain different cuisine in Japan, well, like the gachichuka, okay. So, well, in Korea, also the Chinese cuisine are in vogue nowadays for marashangwa and tea things and other things. But that does not mean that Korean youngsters love Chinese culture. And when it comes to Japan, well, Japan is the country which accepts something foreign quite easily. Do you agree? Yeah, so in Japan, we can find that a lot of K-pop shops, and not only K-pop shops, Chinese shops, and also at the same time. But I don't think that phenomena proves that Japanese youngsters and Japanese people accepts Chinese culture lovely. So, well, it's just a phenomena, and it can be changed. So like that, okay, let's go to Latin America. In Latin America, solidarity was always the words of states, not the population, not the person, individuals. So, and especially when it comes to Cuba, we remember that solidarity is the core words of Cuban propaganda. Yeah, and by making solidarity important to the world in global communist movement, Cuba used that word quite efficiently. But when it comes to Latin America, well, as far as I remember, the network of K-pop group is really, really nicely organized. It was already 8 years ago, 2018, maybe 2000. When was the Brazil World Cup? It was 2018? 16? 16, okay. 2016, maybe 16 or 18, I'm confused. But when I went to Brazil during that period, I had a research project regarding the Koreanology in Latin American countries, and so I was trying to meet those guys who are studying Koreanology in Brazil. The funny thing is that I met a president of K-pop fan club in Brasilia, and my presence in Brazil was spread to all other cities, the big country. So when I went to Manaus, they knew that I was there. Like that. Well, the solidarity was the words of the state in Latin America, but that they trying to find a cause to support their, how can I put it, political protest against their government. And K-pop organization was just used as a tool in that case, even though the K-pop followers do not openly, identify their political orientation and other things. So in that case, how can I put it? The image of K, the democracy and the, freedom and love of something and development, we know that those things are accepted in Latin American countries quite, how can I put it, fantastic way. Fantasy way in Latin America. So, my understanding regarding the kind of K-pop fandom regarding the political protest is just the, how can I put it, a kind of cause that they needed. So I think that if this can be combined with your research question, it would be, how can I put it, maybe better. Thank you.
Would you like to react on this, any of you? Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course. Well, this gachichuka boom does not affect Japan-China relationship, that's definite. But also, there are 3 layers of things in my mind. And one is, what is these Japanese people who love Chinese food? It's not like Japanese people accepting Spanish food or French food, or it's a bit different. These people are more like, do you know these otaku culture, right? They love something strange, and we have like North Korea culture lovers. We have a North Korea karaoke group, pretty big in Japan, and this is the larger version of otaku culture. And what is interesting is, as you see, the sentiment against China is really bad. But even having said that, it's really okay to say, I love Chinese food. I want to go to a Chinese restaurant to become friends with Chinese business owners. And these Chinese business owners are all newcomers, like just 5 or 10 years. Quite many of them came after the COVID. And so, I thought this is something. and that is the first layer. And the second layer is Runri movement, that, some Chinese become desperate in Chinese system during the COVID, and they went out to the other country like Thailand, and some of them came to Japan. And so it's almost Chinese people. The number of Chinese people is right now, some people are already naturalized. So more than 1 million Chinese people are living in Japan. And they are not like foreign workers, right? They have money. And their aim is similar to us: good education, better job. And some people say that 1/5 of Tokyo University students will be Chinese in 10 years or something like that. So we are learning Chinese people are make us learn how to live with foreigners. That's the second layer. The 1 million people, that number matters. The second argument. And third one is this Japan, Tokyo is becoming a gathering point of diaspora Chinese. And that is mainly because Hong Kong's freedom was deteriorating. And so they want, and it's difficult for mainland Chinese to go to Taiwan, right? So they choose a gathering point as Tokyo. And this, and there are many academic salons in Tokyo right now. They speak in Chinese, but everyone can go there. So even if you're Japanese, but if you understand Chinese, then you can attend that class. And this kind of, how can I say, cultural exchange, I think will affect the Japan-China relationship in long run. Because current China's Chinese system and Xi Jinping's rule is very harsh, but I think China is moved like pendulum? Yeah, it's go left and right. So eventually China will come back to more flexible way. It's possible. Xi Jinping does not live forever, so so then the people who are gathering in Tokyo might go back to China and do some intellectual work there. So that in the long run, that kind of relationship, I think, helps Japan-China relationship in long run.
Thank you for the very important question. And when I began to my research, I thought that maybe I should write something about the importance of K-pop in Latin America and the success of Korean government using K-pop as a means of public diplomacy. However, what I found is like what happened in Japan, liking K-pop does not necessarily mean liking Korea or want to know more Korea. Of course, Korean fandom, K-pop fandoms are very favorable toward Korean culture, but it's not that they like Korea because of K-pop. So rather than strengthening the relation between Korea and Latin America, I found rather more interesting phenomenon, which is building this network among Latin American fandom communities. So what does it mean? There has been demise of communities in Latin America, which has been the essence of social movement. For example, neighborhood organizations or labor unions, all those kind of things are in demise. So in the era of declining communities, K-pop fandom functions as community. So I'm not saying that they're replacing those existing communities, but it is quite relevant, the existence of K-pop fandom community as a space where people get together and talk about stuff and discuss about things they don't like. So, as you rightfully pointed out, it might be not about Korean culture or Korea. They just found this new space to get together and organize. And it happens to be K-pop fandom. And they have enormous networks and organizing power on the internet and etc. So they're having this so-called networking in Latin America. This is what it is. So maybe you're saying that solidarity in terms of international level, like Cuba wanted to do, and Venezuela wanted to do among Latin American countries in terms of a governmental level, which is in great demise too, because these days, I feel like every country is on their own, and they're fighting each other, or they're trying to survive in this incredibly hostile global atmosphere. But while institutional attempts are failing, people who love K-pop is building something quite international and strong in some sense. So I wanted to say that there might be new type of social solidarity in the next century or something. So I wanted to make this small contribution. That's all.
Thank you. Next question, no? Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much for all panelists. Thank you for your attention.